guess it'll last as long as you all ask questions. But thanks again for joining tonight. I really appreciate it. I just had some people ask if I would be willing to do something in regards to scorecards, so I threw it out there. Didn't know who would attend, who wouldn't, and just seeing everybody on the call, I'm seeing all sorts of experience levels. So there will be parts of this that maybe seem very basic to some of you, but there will be parts of it for some others that will be new and fresh information. And so it could be very basic, but yet I think it's really important that we just go back to the beginning. There are a lot of people on this call that aren't necessarily working Big Ten matches this year, but are trying to get ITA experience so that next year they can start doing chairs for both non-conference and conference matches. So we're excited to have all of you join our group, and we can't wait for you to join the Big Ten Network next year. For all of you who don't know me, my name is Lisa Mushett. I'm the new coordinator of tennis officials for the Big Ten. Sounds super important. I'm not sure it is. It's just being organized and making sure I have 6 people in all the different places. But it's been, everything's going well so far to start with. Like I've kind of told everybody in my updates that I've been sending out, I have only received 2 coach calls, and both of them have been good things about the crews that they've had. So that's really great. I like those calls a lot better than the other ones that I'm sure potentially I'll get down the road, but maybe not. It's been good so far. So again, I just wanted to just go over a few of the basic things with scorecards. And this year, the scorecards are really important because all of the referees at the matches are now required to fill out a referee report for me. And that is so that I know what is kind of going on in the field. I can't be at every tennis court in every match during the season, but if the referees do their job and fill out the referee reports in a complete manner, then I feel like at least I know what happened. So if a coach or an administrator were to call me about an event or an incident that happened at those courts, then I'm at least prepared and hearing about it first. But there are a lot of things that I do ask of them on that report, including like time when the match starts, overrules, all those kinds of things that are found on the card. So that's why cards this year are really important. Plus, cards are just like verbiage, cards are kind of a basic fundamental of being a good official, and all officials really their cards should all look the same, just like they should all sound the same with verbiage. So maybe down the road I'll do another one of these on verbiage. Some things have changed over the years in terms of cards and how to mark them. I actually had someone reach out to me yesterday. I mark my card one way, and someone said that's not how you do it anymore. So I'm learning just as much as everybody else. But I just kind of wanted to touch base on some of these smaller types of things. So why don't we first start? I didn't put together a PowerPoint. I kind of threw together some different things, some resources that everybody can look at, because these are really where you're going to find a lot of the information. So the first resource, let me share my screen with this. Oops. All right. So the first resource available to everybody, and it's in the forms section of Arbiter, is the USTA Officiating Techniques and Procedure Handbook. And I'm going to be honest with everybody, I didn't even know this existed until 3 weeks ago. And once I saw it and I read it, it was just such an incredible resource. So I encourage everybody, if you haven't read it or you haven't haven't seen it to please take a look at it, because it covers everything that a chair umpire could ever want to know, including verbiage, including how to mark your card. But starting on page 15 of this document is where it talks about the scorecards. It talks about all the different symbols that you would use, and I actually put those on a sheet that we'll go over later. But then if you go down to page 25 in that same book, it actually has a sample scorecard. So for those of you that have never seen a scorecard or have not seen one actually completed correctly, this is what is in that USTA manual. So this would be the start of it. And we'll just go over a couple of different things on this. Actually, I'm going to come back to this. But here's a completed scorecard, pages 25 through 27. And then we'll come back to that. Then, can everybody see this? The ITA manual, was I able to?
Yes.
Okay, great. So then also in the ITA has an officiating procedures manual as well. And on page 12 of that, it also goes over scorecard marking. And hold on, someone just asked to join. There we go. All right. And so it goes over scorecard marking as well. So I invite all of you to review this. I wanted to make sure that the USTA version and the ITA version are the same, and they are. So that's a good start. But pages 12 and 13 talk about scorecards as well. So please take a minute and just read through that. And we'll go over some of this as we continue on. All right. So now I've switched over to a document called Chair Umpire Clinic 329. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Yes? All right. So I'll put this up on in the Forms tab in Arbiter, but it has the link to those two documents that I just talked about. But we'll go through some of the basic card markings just to start with. Some of these, again, are very basic. A for ace, D for double fault. A missed first serve is a dot on the midline between the top box and the bottom box. Code violation. So I think when I sent out my first update, I said that a code violation was an ampersand. That's always how I learned how to do it. But actually now, both the USTA and the ITA would like you to put a C for a code violation, and it goes into the box of the player who was not coded. So who actually won the point because of that code violation. Another interesting thing that comes up very rarely, but I think it's really important to talk about, is the time violation warning. So for a time violation warning, you put a T with a circle around it in the box of the player who receives that time violation warning. Oh, hold on a minute. There we go. And then after any time violations after that, so time violation point penalties, the T without a circle goes in the box of the player who did not commit the time violation. So the player who won the point because of his opponent's time violation. An overrule. Oh, here we go. An overrule is an O with a slash in it. A lot of people just do an O, but both the USTA and the ITA are asking that we put a slash in the middle of that O. Medical timeout point penalty for men's Division I matches is an M, and it goes into the person's box that did not take the medical timeout. Coach's code of conduct is 2 C's written in the opponent's box. Bench harassment is a B. Crowd harassment is an H. those I think are really important because they don't happen very often, so it's easy to forget those symbols. And then X, break of serve, is written over the number of the game where the break of serve took place. So I'll show you a card and it'll have all these things. Hey Nick, how are you? So some other things that I really wanted to just stress at the beginning is you want to keep your scorecard marking at a minimum. The scorecard needs to be clean and easy to read and easy to understand. It used to be that when they did scorecards, the reason that we did them was so coaches and or the media could actually take the card and kind of recreate the match. So by the card, they could come up with their stats and they could write their stories on them, and the coaches can go back and see scenarios, and maybe there were 5 no-ad games and they lost all 5, that type of thing. Now there are a lot of other methods to keep track of that, and there's video now, which what they didn't always have. So scorecards aren't necessarily as important to the coaches as they were before, but in the Big Ten at Rutgers, the Rutgers women's coach and their players want the cards after every match because they review them immediately after the match. So it's really important that they're legible, easy to read, correct, and they should all look the same so they're not guessing every time a different person does a card what it means. Please do your scorecard in pencil in case you make a mistake or there's a lineup change. I know we never make mistakes, but just in case you happen to make a mistake, it's always just better to do it in pencil. And then especially in college with lineup changes, you're oftentimes having to change the name of your player on the fly. So please do them in pencil. Prior to the match, and it depends, I guess, where you're at, some referees complete at least the front of the card for you so you know who's playing who and fills out a lot of the information. Some referees do not. That's a referee thing and how they choose to do it. But once the referee gives you your card, I would try to complete as much as your scorecard front and inside as much as possible before you reach the court. So you should be able to put all your players' names in there. You should be able to put the letters of who is playing at the top, what number balls you're using, those types of things. That just makes it a lot easier when you're actually in the chair. So everything's already there for you. You're not scrambling around if things happen quickly. A reminder, the scorecard is yours for the match. And what I mean by that is that oftentimes you can make necessary notes in your scorecard. Things like pronunciation. I never know how to pronounce people's names, so I actually write it out phonetically on my card so that I have it when I make that announcement before the player serves. Or in doubles, when I'm trying to figure out who is who, maybe a distinguishing feature, like one player has blonde hair and the other one's wearing a red hat. So I'll put that information next to their names so I know who is who. Those things are really important to know which player is which player. And the reason I say that, I mean, you should know that anyway for your benefit, but it never fails. And I had this happen to me when I first started. I was doing a match, and I forgot to ask, and I get up in the chair, and the coach says to me, so which one is which? Who is Smith? And I didn't ask, and I didn't know. And that got the match off on the total wrong foot, and I learned my lesson pretty quickly after that. I need to know who, which player is which, just in case that coach asks, or just so I know better as I'm going through the match in terms of receivers, servers, etc. If you're doing it in pencil, then at the end of the match, you can use all your notes during the match, but then you can erase them at the end so you can keep your card cleaner. So you can erase blonde hair, red hat, because no one else really needs to know that except for you. Then in doubles, you should always write and say the names of the players based in alphabetical order. And I find this a lot. So if Sally Smith and Lisa Mushett are playing, actually it should be written on the card, Lisa Mushett, Sally Smith, because M comes before S. So just a little thing. Then in doubles, we always need to indicate who is serving, especially the first time around. So I'm going to pull up a card here. Oops. Oh no. Let me see if I can find it. Sorry, I forgot to pull this up, and I meant to. Shoot. Hold on just a second. I'm sorry. All right. Oh, there we go. Shoot, I'm so sorry. Hold on just a minute. I put together a whole card, and now I can't pull it up. All right. I'll have to send it out to everybody. I'm sorry. All right, so we'll go back to this. And, all right. So in the end, I'll pull this up for everybody. I'm so sorry. I thought I pulled this up and I didn't. In doubles, you always want to place the server's initials on the side they are serving. So let's say the first person to serve is Minnesota's Sally Smith. So you would put an M in the box, and above that, you would put SS in that same box. So you know that Sally Smith is serving on that side. And you do that for all for the first 4 times serving. So each player has served 1 time. And then some people continue it all the way down the card in the server side boxes. I only do it in the first 4 because if Sally Smith served on the left side, then Sally Smith will serve on the left side every time Sally Smith serves the rest of the match. And this, unless they change sides. But in doubles, let's say, they play 1 set. She'll serve on the very same side. And then if Lisa Mushett is on the right-hand side and she serves second, then she always will serve on that side. So it's just, if you write it in the first 4 boxes, then that way you'll know where each person is serving from, and you'll have a reference throughout the rest of the match. All right. I'm really mad about this because I did this. All right. Then at the top of the card, there is the receivers you put at the top of the card. And let's see. All right. So can everybody see this card that I just put up here?
Yes.
At the top, where it says doubles receivers in the middle. And I always use the middle line going up and down as the net. And then I put in the initials of the receivers that are receiving for the first time on the left-hand side. And so the box on the bottom would be that closest port to me, which would be the deuce side. And the box on the top would be the one farthest from me, which would be the add side. And then when the other team is proceeding for the first time, I would put the server or the receiver on the do side at the top and the receiver on the ad side on the bottom. So see where it says CM, that would be like me as the chair umpire and me looking at the court is how I do it. Does anybody have any questions about that? It's a little bit confusing, but it's really important because in case they ever switch in the middle and one moves from the ad side to the do side, we need to be able to catch that and see that. Or sometimes they forget. Not often, but sometimes.
So a question, Lisa?
Yeah.
So when the first 4 games have been completed in that area you were just referring to,
Yeah.
after the 4th game we're going to see 4 names there or 4 initials.
Yeah. So in this card that I have here, that I brought up, so where it says M, so let's say M is for Minnesota, and then Sally Smith is the first server, there would be an SS there. And then J is for Jacksonville, and Ann Martin is serving, so I put an AM above the J in server side line 2. And then on line 3, Minnesota is serving, and that's David Smith. So DS would go above the M on line 3. And then for Jacksonville, on line 4, it would be the final server. So Terry Ball, so TB would go there. And then the rest of the way down, I would just, for me personally, I would just then put MJ, because you will know on line 5 or in game 5, whoever served in game 1 should be serving for Minnesota in game 5. And then game 6, whoever served in game 2 for Jacksonville would be serving in game 6 for Jacksonville. Does that make sense to everybody?
Mm-hmm.
Did that answer that question?
Well, it actually, Lisa, I was thinking of at the very top where we have doubles receivers and the CM.
Oh, yeah?
My question was really directed to there. After the first 4 games, are we going to see 4 names up there?
You actually should be able to see it after the first 2 games, because the first game you'll be able to know who your receivers are.
True. Perhaps I've been doing it wrong, but I've never had 4 names in there. What I've done in the past, and I'll correct it, is however necessary, I just put who's in the deuce court for each team.
And that works as well. I'm more visual, so I like to have all 4 up there, but if you'd rather just put the receiver in the deuce court, then you know that the other one would be on the ad side, you can do that as well.
Okay.
Are there any more questions about anything that I've gone over a lot already, but any questions before we move forward to some of the next things? Okay. Well, we'll stick with this card because I think this is kind of a good thing. And again, some of this is very basic, but I want to review it because you'll be surprised what I've seen so far this year. But I want to make sure that everybody understands. So let's look at game 1. And the way it works is the server is always on the top line, and the receiver would always be the bottom line. So it's not who's on top of the scoreboard. You know, oftentimes we've got the electronic scoreboards. So if we have Purdue on the top and Indiana at the bottom, it's not that we keep Purdue on the top of our card all the time. It's actually who's serving is on the top line and the receiver's on the bottom line. Then you'll notice with the top box and the bottom box, in each area, there's 1 mark If the server wins the point, you mark the box on the top. If the receiver wins the point, you mark the box on the bottom. So if you look at this card in game 1, the server won the first point. Then the second point, the server won. The third point, the receiver won. The fourth point, the server won. The fifth point was the receiver. The sixth point was the receiver. So therefore, we're going to deuce. Now this card is a USTA card, so this is actually add scoring. But in Division 1, we play no add scoring. So I actually learned something over the weekend. I've always just used the first box as whoever won the point, I would just mark the first box. But someone told me this weekend that on the cards that have 2 boxes, if the server or if the receiver chooses the deuce side, you mark it in the first box. If the receiver chooses the add side, then you would mark it in the second group of boxes. I don't know if others do it that way. I never even thought about that, but it makes a lot of sense because it's just another stat for the coaches and for the players to see what side they're actually receiving the ball on.
So Lisa, in the interest of being consistent,
Yep.
What do you want us to do? Do you want us to follow that, or do you want to just mark it in the first box? And again, and you can send it out in an email if you want to think about it. But
I never had even thought about it until Saturday when somebody told me that, because I had always marked it in the first box. Has anyone else in this call ever done that?
No, I've never done it. I think I heard it once a few years ago, but I haven't done it.
I do it. This is Marilyn.
Yep. Marilyn was the one that showed me this weekend. So.
Marilyn, where did you learn that? Nobody told me. It was just one day. I thought this would be my learning. Yeah. It would just be my learning if a coach looks at the cards. It's easy to do.
If you want to, I'm not. That's a little too far down the rabbit hole for me personally.
Oh, Rachel.
Love you, Marilyn. You know it.
Well, let me think about it. Let me talk to a couple more people and say what they think. But I actually thought that was brilliant, Marilyn. But that would be changing the way a lot of people do it. So we'll see what they say moving forward. I'll get back to everybody on that. But so then once the game is won, you go to the end and you would mark who won the game under the player's name or the team name, whatever you have written here. Now, if you've noticed this, people do this differently. Some people like to keep a running tally like this, where you have each game and you have lots of numbers. I don't like that. It gets too cluttered for me, so I actually only put the score of the person who won the game. So my card would be just a 1 here in the first line. The next one would be 1-all, but then it would only say 2. The next one I'd only put a 2, and on line 4 I'd only put a 3. I would not put that 1 there. And either way is acceptable. People function differently and work differently, so I'm okay either way. I just wanted to bring that to everybody's attention. And then same with the tiebreaker. You see it here as well. To me, that's a lot of numbers, and it causes great confusion for me. But for other people, they like this, and it's easier for them to remember where they're at and to read. So whatever is however you feel comfortable doing it, I'm okay with that. So then, as we continue down the card, you'll see some of the different symbols that we talked about. The ace, the A, the D, the dot, so that's a first service fault, and then the D is a double fault. Here's the code violation that occurred in the match. In game 2, the third box. In game 2, there was also an overrule, as you can see by the slash with the circle around it. There was a lot that happened in game 2. There was also a time violation and a game penalty in this particular example.
When there's a double fault, I never put the dot in anymore because I think it's redundant. Is that okay?
Well, so do you not mark your double fault in between your fault in between first and second serve?
Only if it's the double fault.
So,
because it's redundant.
Well, but you want to know first serve percentage, though.
Well, you can still figure that out. If it's a double fault, obviously they didn't get the first serve in.
The only thing I would say is sometimes things can happen in between those points,
Right.
and depending on how many lets you've played. For especially beginners, I don't think you're wanting to wait until the end of the point to mark mark your double fault. Like, there could be times where you're like, oh crap, am I on the first or second serve if something weird happens, and then you'll have it there.
Well, I just do it so I'm not really into the card.
Yep, I'm just thinking about it from a beginner's perspective and things that are going to happen. Crap, it still happens to me, okay? Like, what if they serve a fault and then you're getting into some discussion with the coach and
Exactly.
you forget where you're at the point, So that's all. If that works for you, Marilyn, I think that's great. But as far as training people who are new to this, I would not recommend it.
So I'm just gonna say one little note here about that little dot. I think we absolutely have to mark it. Sometimes the timing, we're afraid that we're gonna be not watching the second serve to be marking that little dot. But I usually mark when it's usually the receiver who is clearing that ball or the server is clearing that first serve that was returned out. There is enough time to put that little dot without, not watching what's going to happen.
I agree with you, Adrienne. I guess I would prefer to see that dot there as well. Mm-hmm. Because there's just a lot that can happen. Sorry. Okay. So as you can see, we're going down the card here. And one of the things that I see a lot of is that people do not remember to bring down their scores to the bottom down here. So where you should always bring your set score and drop it down to this line above where it says finish time. And then really this one is not correct either. This tiebreaker should also be in the bottom boxes down here with the final score. And then I always want to make sure that, and this one's actually not correct. Oh yeah, I think that's a 6. It's supposed to be 7-6, but they need to redo their book. And then you should always
third set, that's the tie break.
Right. Oh, the third set, yeah. But they did not, what they didn't do is they didn't put the tiebreaker score underneath. So underneath, you're supposed to put a parenthesis, a 4, and then parenthesis underneath so you know what that tiebreaker is. inside of the card.
I have a question about the tiebreak.
Yeah.
Lineup over there. Why is it so on here? Jones served last. They're at 6-all. They're going to a tiebreaker, which means Miller is going to serve and they're going to stay. So why is it not set up with Miller on the right and Jones on the left? Like, do you know what I mean? For the tiebreak.
So my guess is that the way they did it was that they had already filled in their names beforehand, and they did it based on who was on top and who was on bottom. And when
I just put them over there based on where they are at the net, so I know that Jones started over here, whatever. So is that's correct to do, though, right? I can set it up that way.
you can certainly set it up that way if that helps you to remember.
That's just certainly not how I've been instructed.
Right.
I mean, the point is to have it consistent for every set, every tiebreak. So when you're reading across the card, you can, you know what I mean? As soon as you
Yeah.
I used to do that too, Dominique, and I only switched it in like the last year or two. Right. And that's just to make it to read it consistently. The point is to read the card consistently, and it's not basing it off of like where the players are.
Right, but everything is set up like inside the card. It's up top. And she talked about here's the net, here's your receivers on this side, you know what I mean? And then also for the actual each team.
No, when she's talking about the labels for the game, name on the game column and the tiebreak columns, those do not change based on player position. That is the same every
No, I'm saying that everything is set up on the card where when it's a doubles receivers, it's whoever the receivers are to the left, you're going to put them to the left because we're always looking at the scorecard that way. Same with the M and J. Depending on where they start, I know that it's still, well, the M and the J on the beginning game one, M is starting to serve on the left side of my court.
That just happens to be how this card is set up. That is not.
Right, so that's how I set up my tiebreaker as well. However,
no, I'm telling you that's not how you're supposed to do it. That's fine. You do your card however you want to, but that's not how you're supposed to do it.
Right.
That's what I was asking. I just was kind of figuring if we're keeping them. Anyway.
So, all right. So we'll move to the back now because that's an area that I think is really missed. Oftentimes people say at the beginning of the card, but they forget about doing the back of the card, and the back is really important, especially for these referee reports that I've been telling you about. So as much detail as you can put in the back would be great. So the first one, a code violation, it asks, there's no warning, so you would never have anything in the warning box anymore. But point, so in the third set, there was a point penalty given when it was 1-love, 15-all. And the verbal abuse is what this one is here. And they just gave up some description as to what was said. Then the game penalty also came in the third set in that same game when it was advantage to Jones. Again, another verbal abuse. So the more information you can put back there, the better. In these note areas here, that's where I would like to see things, if you ever have a coach's code or a bench harassment or a crowd harassment, those all are going to go in the blank lines here. So then, and you're going to write a description about what happens so that I know what happens there. Also, what I have been doing is because I asked the referees to provide how many overrules were issued during a match. So I've been encouraging my chair officials to write overrules and write, Minnesota 2, Jacksonville 1, just so that I know that they're there, and then I can go back if I need to and look at where those overrules are marked in the card. But then also we want to include interruptions or bathroom breaks. We want to include that in there. This is where your medical timeout would go if the medical timeout was taken. And then the bottom would be time violations.
Lisa, I have
Yeah.
a question about time violations.
Yeah.
When you are calculating how long the match occurred, do you subtract out the time issue or not? I've seen it both ways.
So I had never heard that until you mentioned it to me when we were at Wisconsin at that training at the beginning of the year. I actually followed up this weekend when I was with some people, including Courtney Pocky at the ITA, and I asked if we need to subtract that out. And everybody has said no, they do not subtract that out. Now, you would subtract out if there was a weather delay or a longer delay for whatever reason, the lights went out or whatever. But in terms of bathroom breaks and time violations, you do not subtract that out of the total time at the end of the match.
Great, thank you.
Just gets to be too complicated. That's too much math for my brain.
So Lisa,
Yes.
on the interruptions on a bathroom break, they take a break between the first and second sets.
Yep.
Are we characterizing it as set 1 games, 6 for hour,
Yep.
and then frame 2 from the 5-minute break, and you want the player's name, and that's about it.
Right.
So that's all you got to do.
Yes.
Between set 1 and set 2, we have it. No, okay.
No, that would be great.
The end of the set. Okay.
Yep. All right. Any other questions before we move on real quick? All right. I'm going to switch to. All right. So I just pulled up. I do have Big Ten scorecards that are available for all the referees or for you to pull down if you want. They look a little different than the USTA scorecard. They're actually based on the ITA scorecards, but has all the same information on it. So the front of the card, which we want to make sure the front of the card is complete, and oftentimes this part will be filled out, the match versus who, but we always want to make sure that the time started, the time finished, the duration, the winners, if it was an abandoned match, that type of thing. All of those things are filled in and completed. Also, you always want to make sure you sign your card. And I actually encourage everybody when they sign your card and then put your ITA number next to it. In case anybody were to ever ask what your ITA number is, then at least I have it. And I know a lot of referees ask for it beforehand. A lot of them don't, but it's always good just to put it on there. So then this would be the other things that are on the back, which we've talked about. So one of the things they do add is the extended tie break onto the back. If your tie break is 40 to 38, it would continue on the back side here. Hopefully you won't get to that, but you never know, I guess. And then there's general notes here in the back as well, where you can add those things that we talked. So they did add coaches' code of conduct boxes, but if you have bench harassment or crowd harassment or overrules, if you could put those in the general notes, that would be great. And then the front of the card, or the inside of the card, so you'll notice for the ITA that there is only, because of no ad scoring, there's only the 2 boxes. So these cards and the ITA cards can only be used for Division 1 and 2. Division 3 actually plays ad scoring. So I actually did a tournament. I did a match in the fall that was a Division 3 match, and I used an ITA card. And the first deuce, I got to the second deuce, and I didn't have anywhere else to put it. So I had to get down in the middle and get a new card and actually redo it. So just remember that if you're ever doing a chair for Division 3 match, you actually need a card that extends farther than two boxes. But again, these are available on the Arbor site in the Forms tab, and there's also a doubles card as well. It has the doubles receivers and the server side, and everything else should be the same. Make sure you always fill out the top as well, the ball numbers, the start time, that you check the net. Those things are all very important as well. All right. I'm going to go back to my notes here. Make sure we talked about the receivers, the server. Oh, so at the end of the match, when you're kind of reviewing your card, one of the things that I always encourage people to do, it's really easy to forget to mark that last point in a game. You know, you've got a lot going on with the scoreboard and resetting the game, and you're keeping your head up to make sure nothing happens, and you're marking the game won. But oftentimes people forget to mark that last point. So I always go back at the end of the match and make sure that I have 4 slashes on a line to make sure that for whoever wins the game. Let's see. We talked about the multiple dues. Make sure again to carry down your set score and your tiebreaker score to the bottom of the card. Again, make sure everything's complete. The times are really important. Descriptions on the back, critical, the overrules, and then just signing your card. So those are kind of the big things I wanted to point out. I don't know if people have specific questions that they want to ask, or maybe some things that I missed. But we have a few minutes if there are any more questions. Anybody? So again, I know that a lot of this is very basic for people, but for some of you that are new, maybe not so basic, but I'd just love for all of us to be on the same page. I am in constant contact with the coordinator of the Big 12 and also with the ACC, and we have been talking about how important it is to try and get all of the officials on the same page. So we all sound the same, so we're all marking our scorecard the same. That's 85% of being an official, and if we can all sound the same and do all of those things the same, then we're going to be in a really good spot as a group moving forward, because we're only as good as the weakest link in our little group, and we want everybody to be great. And so these little things are what make officials great.
Hey, Lisa.
Yeah.
Speaking as the weakest link, hey, so we don't record thoughts or anything in the tie break. You're not recording double thoughts in the tie break. You're not recording aces, anything like that, right?
So I do. I noticed that on that card they didn't. I just assumed they didn't. But I do record that because, again, if someone wants to see the stats,
How do you do that? So do you put the number next to it or something?
Yeah, so normally I'll put an A or a D, and then I'll put the number next to it. I also, on the fault, I do keep track of a first service fault, and I put the dot on the line in the middle.
Yeah, I do that too. Okay, all right, thank you.
Yep. And then, of course, if there were a code violation or an overrule or anything like that, you want to make sure that you mark that in the tiebreaker columns as well, because that's important information to have.
Yeah, good point.
Lisa, I did have one question for you.
Yeah, hi, Allison.
Hi. So the doubles receivers, I know we've beat this forever, but so to me, when I look at it, the CM would be the center mark, and I know you said to you it's the net. I just want to be sure that I'm understanding how to put in the receivers correctly. Do you want us to all treat that as the net, or if we do it as a center mark, would the same information still get across?
How does everyone else do it? I've always view the CM as kind of where the chair is, and I'm looking to my left and I'm looking to my right. But am I doing that? Maybe I'm doing it wrong. I don't know.
No, that's correct. That's the way we can talk.
Okay. So Allison, I would use that CM as the chair and where you're sitting, and then as you're looking out in the court to the left and to the right.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Anybody else?
What's CM stand for? That's the first time I ever heard us say center mark.
That's the first time I've ever heard that too.
Yeah.
I guess I don't really know what it means.
That's what I assumed when I saw it. I saw the way it was out, and I figured it was the center mark, you know. So then the left would be to add, and the right would be to do. So that's kind of how I understood it in my brain. So that's why I wanted to ask the question.
I've always wondered about it, and the thing is I always it twists my mind around because obviously when on the first point, after the first game, the players change ends, and so you kind of have to think about it backwards in order to get them into the right, side, receiver side. So it always twists my mind around, but yeah, I never knew what CM stood for. Okay.
I guess I don't know what it stands for either. I just always viewed it as that's where the chair is. That CM was the chair.
The chair maniac. Okay.
That's about how I feel when I'm in the chair. Yeah. Anybody else? All right. Well, we got it done in under an hour. Again, thank you again for joining, and thank you everybody for your input and for just sharing your thoughts. Like I said, I don't know everything, so I kind of like it when people tell me these different things and how they do it because it makes me think differently. But I really do appreciate it. Again, if you have any other questions, please feel free to reach out to me, whether it's about scorecards or it's about verbiage or rules or whatever else. My phone and my email are always available, so please reach out.
Thank you so much for
everybody. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.